Thank you, Representative Toth. You weren't there to lay out this bill in the Public Education Committee, so we didn't get a chance to ask you these questions before the bill came to the floor, so we're going to do it now. Last week was Teacher Appreciation Week, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you're not an educator, are you, Mr. Toth?
I'm sorry, one more time.
You're not an educator, are you?
I'm a pastoral teacher.
Do you have a degree in education?
I do not.
A degree in curriculum development?
No, I don't.
Degree in instructional practice?
No. In fact, I did not finish my college degree.
And you know that I was a public school teacher before coming to this body?
Yes. I did not know that, but I'll take your word for it.
Are you aware that most of the major education groups in this state oppose this bill?
I was not aware of that.
Are you aware that Texas Council of Social Studies opposes this bill?
I'm not informed.
Are you aware that the Texas Social Studies Supervisors Association opposes this bill?
I'm not informed.
Are you aware that the Association of Texas Professional Educators opposes this bill?
I'm not informed of that.
Pastors for Texas Children opposes this bill? And major chambers of commerce around the state, are you aware of that?
I'm not aware.
In lines 9 and 10 on the second page, your bill says a teacher may not be compelled to discuss current events, correct?
We have a perfecting amendment on that to...
Currently, that's what the bill says.
So what line are you on?
Lines 9 and 10 on the second page.
And what's your question?
Your bill says a teacher may not be compelled to discuss current events, correct?
Correct.
Have you read our educational standards in Texas, also known as the TEKS?
The TEKS, and we have a clarifying amendment on this, but if you'll read down to point 2, line 12, a teacher who chooses to discuss topics described by subdivision 1 shall, to the best of the teacher's ability, strive to explore these topics from a diverse
Mr. Toth, have you
and
read
contending perspective without
have you
giving
read chapter
deference.
113 of the Texas Administrative Code?
I'm familiar with it, which is why we've got a perfecting amendment on this, but that is also why line 12 through 15 describes that these can be discussed, but that just needs to be done from a diverse perspective while not advocating.
So your amendment will be removing this ban on speaking about
There's
current
not
events.
a ban.
It says a teacher may not be compelled. Should a teacher be compelled to teach the TEKS in Texas?
It doesn't say that they can't teach the TEKS. In fact, point 2 brings clarification to this in case there is any confusion.
Mr. Toth, your bill says a teacher may not be compelled to discuss current events. Throughout the social studies TEKS in chapter 113, it says that students are expected to gather information about historical events, be able to interpret historical and current events, to be able to identify different points of view about an issue or current topic, about a contemporary event. Throughout the social studies TEKS, teachers are required to teach current events. Are you aware of that?
I am. And that's why point 2 brings clarification to it.
I know you keep talking about that same section, right. But I'm asking you about the section before where it says a teacher may not be compelled to discuss current events. Should a teacher be compelled to teach the TEKS in the state of Texas?
Of course.
Okay. But you're going to be providing an amendment to strike that part of your bill that conflicts with the TEKS?
It doesn't conflict with the TEKS because of points 12 through 15, and we actually talked with attorneys about this, including the top attorney in the state of Texas.
Mr. Toth, you just said a teacher should be compelled to teach the TEKS. I just listed out in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 9th grade, and 12th grade, teachers are required to teach current events, but your bill doesn't compel them to do so. Should teachers in Texas be compelled to teach the TEKS?
The teachers must teach the TEKS, which is why point 2 brings clarification to point 1.
All right, so we need to get rid of lines 9 and 10 on the second page. Mr. Toth, are you familiar with the learning pyramid?
I'm not advised.
So when you're becoming an educator, they teach you about the learning pyramid, which suggests that some methods of learning and study are more effective than others. So at the top of the pyramid are the more shallow types of learning, which are listening to a lecture, reading. The bottom of the pyramid are the deeper types of learning, like practicing or teaching others. What is the difference between civics and history?
Understanding how our current system of justice, how our current laws work, as opposed to historical Events?
The goal of civics education is social and political participation, correct?
Correct.
And the goal is to sustain
definition.
our constitutional democracy?
I'm sorry?
And the overall goal should be to sustain our constitutional democracy, the goal of civics education.
Members, please take your conversations outside the chamber.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that, Representative?
I was just asking you if the overarching goal of civics is to sustain our constitutional democracy.
Correct.
Your bill bans service learning programs with any organization that also engages in social or political activism or lobbying or advocacy at the federal, state, or local level. Is that correct?
Can I just respond to your first comment?
Sure.
That you said it's important for us to understand, what was it, the Constitution?
Do you have
our form of government?
I asked you what the goal of civics education is.
So I teach citizenship back in Montgomery County. And one of the interesting things is that while some of the people that come have a hard time understanding English, as they're learning English, they're learning...
Gentleman's time has expired.
Mr. Speaker, I move to extend the gentleman's time.
Members, you heard the motions of objection. Chair hears none. The gentleman's time is extended.
And so most of these people don't even understand or have not really mastered English yet. And yet the really cool thing is that 90+% of them will pass their citizenship test in the first try. But the really sad thing is that only about 19% of Americans can get 6 out of 10 questions correct.
Yeah, Mr. Toth, I think we all agree
which is really
about the
sad,
need.
which
Yes.
is very sad, and it points to a real problem that we've got in our nation. You're pointing to something that's critically important, and the problem is
Mr.
that
Toth, respectfully, we got a lot
Americans-
of questions to get through. Like I said, you weren't in the committee to lay out the bill, so I want to make sure we get through these
Sure,
questions.
you bet.
Your bill bans service learning programs with any organization that also engages in social or political activism or advocacy at the federal, state, or local level, correct?
Where are you pointing on the bill? I apologize.
So this is the section of the bill that is about what organizations a student can affiliate with for class credit.
Where are you in the bill?
So, Ms. Toth, this is page 2 of your bill,
Okay.
and this is starting at line 16.
Can you read it? Or do you want me to read it?
We don't need to read it. Hopefully you understand your own bill. My question is, are we banning service learning programs with any organization that engages in social or political activism or advocacy?
Any child that would like to take part in coming to the Capitol, any child that would like to take part in going door to door, any child that would like to take part in registering voters is free to do that under the supervision of their parent and the guidance of their parent.
Right. They can't do it in a public school context. So this bill would ban students from earning class credit for volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club?
The only thing it would ban...
That's just a yes or no, Mr. Toth.
No.
It will not?
No, it will
The
not.
Boys and Girls Club of America advocates for policies at the state and federal level that help at-risk youth. So this bill would ban students earning class credit by volunteering with the Boys and Girls Club.
No, it won't ban that. It will not ban that.
Mr. Toth, have you read your own bill?
I have read my bill, and what it bans, let me read it to you. The only thing it bans, the only thing it precludes is if it's done to advanced critical race theory.
No, Mr. Toth, that's incorrect. You are banning any work with an organization that lobbies for legislation at the federal, state, or local level, or that advocates for social and public policy, or is involved in political activism.
So if a child, let's say if a child is in school, one sec.
Mr. Toth, I'm going to... Are you... Okay, I'll wait till you're done.
My apologies. I'm sorry.
Mr. Toth,
So
this bill would ban students from earning class credit for volunteering with the Rotary Club because the Rotary Club advocates for educational and humanitarian causes.
No, it would not.
No, it would not? Can you explain how it would not?
What it would ban is it would ban the use of our children by whether it's the National Rifle Association or Planned Parenthood from advocating, from lobbying on behalf of these organizations.
That may be your desire, Mr. Toth, but that's not your bill.
That is the bill. And so if a child chooses to do that on their own, they can do that on their own with the direction of their parents.
I'm just reading your bill. I'm reading the words on the page. This bill would ban students from earning class credit for volunteering with the Humane Society.
If the children are being used,
Mr. Toth,
whether it's the NRA or whatever else, the kids are still allowed to do it. They will not get class credit for it.
So this bill would ban students from earning class credit for volunteering with the Humane Society, since the Humane Society advocates for animal welfare issues? Okay.
Any child that wants to do that, they can still do it.
Mr. Toth, how is social advocacy defined in this bill, or how do you define social advocacy?
Where are you at in the bill?
Say it again.
Where do you see it in the bill? And I can put it in context.
Line 23 on page 2.
So the next amendment that we're going to take is going to strike 3A, which is lines 19 through 23.
Oh, that's great. Hopefully we can keep going. We can just strike the whole bill. Why not just trust Texas teachers to make these decisions for their own students in their own classroom?
So I think we need to start trusting parents to make these decisions for their children and not teachers. It's the responsibility of parents to instill values in their kids and not teachers.
Mr. Toth, how do you define activism? We agreed the goal of civics was to increase political participation earlier. What's the difference between activism and participation? Is it only activism when progressives do it?
No, I think it's activism when you're trying to change the system.
So were the Founding Fathers activists?
Certainly. So were the Freedom Riders. So were the three young men that died in Mississippi in 1964.
I completely agree. So, Mr. Toth, you would agree that any sound civics program should have action at the center of it, correct?
The question is, at what age, Representative, does that transition from oversight of a parent and direction of a teacher?
Mr. Toth, your bill is
when my children were little, I took them to Tamaulipas and Reynosa every Easter and for spring break, and we built houses. We built schoolrooms. We did medical service work.
We got to move through these questions. I think the concern is that if we remove these current events TEKs or these service learning opportunities in our public schools, it's going to be affluent kids who have these opportunities, kids like yours, but kids like the ones I taught on the west side of San Antonio.
Members, please take your conversations outside the chamber.
Students like the ones I used to teach.
I apologize. Can you repeat that?
I'm explaining to you, I think the concern is that if we remove these service learning programs from our civics classrooms or our social studies classrooms, that it will be affluent kids like your own that will have access to these types of training and democracy, but not the students who need them most, like the ones that I used to teach on the west side of San Antonio. And those are the ones that we desperately need to take ownership of the democratic process and to serve in bodies like this one.
Can I respond to that?
Mr. Toth, if your concern is...
Mr. Talarico, can I respond to that?
Sure.
So my kids went with our church, and we approved it, and the church paid for everything. And my church and the people that I worship with are some of the poorest people in the city of Houston. So the activism that we do has nothing to do with wealth. It has everything to do with meeting a need, when a parent sees a need, and instilling direction in their child's heart and mind that this is something that they need to do and be about.
The difference, Mr. Toth, is that public education is available to every child in Texas. Not every child has a family or a church that's able to support those types of activities. That's the difference. If your concern is teacher bias, then why do we not just go after that in your bill? It seems to me that everything in this bill could be
We
cut,
have an amendment for
except
that
for
as well.
lines 12 through 15 on
We
the
have an
second
amendment
page.
for that as well, Representative.
Is it true that teacher bias has always been an issue in the practice of education? While teaching literature or social studies or health or life skills?
I think that you're always, Representative, going to hear some passion from a teacher. I can't believe anyone would teach if they didn't have a conviction and a passion that they wanted to share, right?
So why not just let Texas teachers check their own bias like they always have?
In the midst of sharing that passion, the question is, how do you do it in such a way that still honors the values
Mr. Toth,
that a parent is trying to instill in their child?
What empirical evidence do you have that there's an actual problem here, that teacher bias is on the rise?
Can you repeat it? I'm sorry.
What empirical evidence do you have that there's an actual problem here, that teacher bias is on the rise or is increasing in the state?
Empirical
in other words,
evidence?
Why didn't you commission...
Empirical evidence?
Why did you not commission a TA study or a statewide survey?
Let me share.
Gentleman's time's expired.